All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little Golden State Warrior video. And let's talk a little bit about the Warriors. There's been a lot going on since the end of the year. And let's just lay it out there, kind of state of the state on Golden State. Now, check out Pig and a Pickle, by the way. They got two locations, Emeryville and Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in Marin from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. All right, some of my thoughts and opinions on the Warriors as of late. Let's start with Bob Myers. Bob Myers did not resign. Bob Myers was fired. Bob Myers was essentially fired. He was forced out. That's my belief. They can say what they want. I don't believe a lot of the things I heard in that press conference, including that the owner just knew about it. I just found out today. Yeah, right. Come on. I was born in the day, but it wasn't yesterday. So, Bob Myers, no doubt. You don't leave a job like that. He's going to go do other things. I don't believe he walked away on his own. I believe he was either directly fired or directly forced out, was told, was going to be held to new restraints and, didn't want to stick around. And I think ultimately they created conditions. And when I say they, I'm talking about Joe, created conditions where Bob didn't want to be there any longer. So in my opinion, he was the equivalent of fired, or you could say forced out, but either way, it's the same thing. Joe Lacob is essentially the new general manager. Now, I know Mike Dunleavy has the title, and I know it will be a collaborative effort as they make all the calls. But guess what? Who's got the final call? The Bucks got to stop with somebody, and guess who it stops with? Joe freaking Lacob. So he's the GM. You want to call him the head of basketball operations or the GM or the owner or the co-owner, or call him whatever you want. The GM in most basketball organizations makes the final call. In the Warriors organization, Joe has the final call on all basketball-related moves. I cannot be convinced otherwise. So essentially, Joe is the new GM. Draymond Green leveraged the Chris Paul Jordan Poole trade by opting out. He basically gave the Warriors an ultimatum. It's him or me. They went with him, or they went with Green instead of Poole, and he leveraged that trade. If Poole doesn't get moved, I don't think Green comes back. I think that was a direct opt-out for leverage. There are probably other reasons to opt out in addition, but by opting out, he leveraged the Jordan Poole, Chris Paul trade. Steve Kerr helped Draymond leverage the Poole trade by basically describing Poole as a powder, as immature, as a guy who's on his own agenda. When he went on with Draymond on the podcast, he essentially helped leverage that trade as well. Draymond, I believe, is going to return to the Warriors. I think it's going to be a 3-year, $100 million deal. We had Bobby Marks on 95.7 The Game yesterday, as I sat in for Mark Willard with Dan Dibley. And Bobby, who's as tuned in as anybody, said 3 years, $100 million. I think that's spot on. I think 3 years and 75 is a pipe dream that would be very favorable for the Warriors. This idea that he's getting $40 million a year and $120 million, that ain't happening either. 3 years, $100 million, 33.3 a year. Sounds about right. It's a $6 million increase. It's probably $3 or $4 million more than Draymond is going to be worth. It could look bad on the back end of the deal, but that's what I believe the terms will be. 3 years, $100 million, round numbers. Draymond returns to the Warriors. The team cannot win a title as is with only minimum salary additions, even if they bring back Draymond Green. And I like the draft picks of Brandon Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis. But even if you have those two rookies and Draymond Green comes back, and let's say you even get a super favorable minimum salary additions, maybe Seth Curry signs for the minimum. Thomas Bryant signs for the minimum. Young guy with lots of options, probably going to get more money. 39% three-point shooter. Even if they get Seth Curry and Thomas Bryant as minimum salary additions, which would be an absolute revelation if they did, and a huge positive, they're still not winning the title. You've got young teams that are getting better. The Warriors core is older. They didn't get anywhere close to a title this year. I think they're going to struggle without Jordan Poole to get through the regular season because they're going to have so many older players, so many younger players. not enough players in their prime. So I think they're going to struggle to win in the mid 40s again. I think they'll give it a good, hard fight, but I think they'll check out in the second round or possibly the conference finals. I'm not saying they're not a playoff team. They are a playoff team. But the idea that they're going to be better than every other team in the West, including the defending champion Nuggets, who are all in their prime with the MVP of the league, who's right in the prime of his career, no. The Warriors can't win a title as is with only minimum salary additions. And I saved the best for last. I love Klay Thompson. I'm a huge Klay Thompson fan, but I really am of the belief that Klay will be traded this summer after July 1st. I don't think Klay I don't think Klay's the guy that you want if he's not happy. I don't think that the Warriors and Klay can both be happy in a contractual situation. Either the Warriors are not going to be happy with what they're paying him, or Klay's not going to be happy with what he's making. I don't think he can handle the twilight of his career with grace and without being bitter. And I really think that obviously his best days are behind him. He's no longer the defender that he used to be. I think his 3-point season that he had this year really camouflaged his struggles from two. And I think when you look at it and you look at, I think the Warriors brass, most notably Joe, but they'll look at their team, even with the minimums, and they'll say, you know what, are we good enough to win a title? And they'll say, no, we're not good enough to win a title. And I think Klay ultimately will be traded. Now, where is he going to go? I threw out a trade that makes sense to me, and that's to Minnesota for Karl-Anthony Towns. And a bunch of people pushed back with, no, I hate Karl-Anthony Towns. Karl-Anthony Towns is this. Karl-Anthony Towns is that. He doesn't play hard. He's this. He's that. A lot of those same things were said about another T-Wolf back in the day. His name was Andrew Wiggins. And Wiggins is a totally different player with the Warriors than he was with the T-Wolves. And I think Karl-Anthony Towns would be a totally different player with the Warriors than he was in Minnesota as well. So I think that one makes a lot of sense. But if you told me Klay goes to the Clippers for Paul George, I could see that as well. If you told me that Klay went somewhere else for a package of players, Toronto in a big deal for Siakam, that includes Kuminga and Moody, I could see that as well. But ultimately, Klay, I believe, will be traded this summer after July 1st. So just to sum it up, Bob Myers was fired. Joe Lacob's the new GM. Draymond Green leveraged the pool for Paul trade. Kerr helped him. Draymond's going to return. It's going to be 3 years, $100 million. The team cannot win a title as is, even with big-time minimum salary additions. And Klay, sadly, because he's one of my favorites, will be traded this summer after July 1st. All right, hope you enjoyed our Warrior video. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of The Krug Show. And thanks to all of you for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.